What's up, guys?
Hi.
Welcome to episode 20.
Wow.
20. Big T0. Our show is old enough to vote if we're going to count episodes.
I would say we have a little college baby.
It's true. That's a little old. 20 years old? I guess. I don't know. Anyways, episode 20, we wanted to talk about what's trending today, tip of the day. We wanted to also cover a little bit about how we function in our environments and how to make our environments work for us, or what we like about our environments. And then we wanted to also discuss a little bit about, what's the last one?
Body language.
Body language, that's right. And what our body language says about, not body language says about us, because I feel like that's overanalyzed a little bit, but like how we communicate with body language.
Yeah.
And body language can encompass almost anything besides using words in order to communicate.
Right. Which I find a really interesting one. So I'm excited to dive into that wow, I can talk topic.
Yeah.
Because my job kind of hinges on me being able to read body language and body cues, but then also too, when I was in college, as like one of my GE courses, I took a nonverbal communication class, which I didn't expect to learn anything from it, and honestly was one of my favorite classes in college, just because of the dynamics that they talked about. So that'll be fun.
Well, we'll get into that. But first, what's trending, babe?
Cryotherapy. And it's funny because we live in Boston, which is a really cold environment anyways. And so whenever people ask me about it, I'm kind of like, really? And it's been around for a bit. But cryotherapy, there's a lot of benefits to it. It helps a lot with like cellular regeneration. And so people do it for the anti-aging and longevity benefits. And I even had a therapist who was like, if you want to get your mind sharper than it's ever been before, go take cold showers, because it'll force you to learn how to calm down your anxiety and all that. That being said, I do think the cold plunge trend has gotten a little out of hand.
I was going to say, like, what I know about cryotherapy comes in cold plunges, first of all. Like those big tubs that like athletes just jump into after like a crazy workout, and cold showers. And I don't think cold showers have a very good reputation.
No.
But yeah, the first time I was exposed to cryotherapy, I think I was in high school, and like some kids that were like on like the football team or something like that were like jumping into these huge tubs of ice and water. And I just didn't understand it back then. And like I see it every now and then sporadically since then, and then it's always been associated with me with like the top level of athletics, you know what I mean? I never associated with like this, like if you go to the gym regularly just to like work out and get in shape, I've never known somebody like that to do cold plunges or cryotherapy. I've always ever associated cold plunges and cryotherapy with athletes who are on like some sort of team, or like people who are really trying to push themselves as hard as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for recovery purposes, like to your point, for athletic gains and things like that, I think it's an awesome choice. Or if you're looking for the mental benefits of having to do something where you are focusing against all odds, where your body is just screaming at you, like I think those are both like beneficial things. But I think to average Joe who doesn't have either of those things as a goal, or who hasn't done the things that are a little bit lower hanging fruit, it's a bit much. Especially when people are dropping like thousands of dollars on these outside cryotherapy buckets, essentially, which you could get at Home Depot or even like fill up at something else, instead of spending thousands of dollars on this thing that you're probably going to use like twice a month and then forget about it for the next 10 years and then sell it on eBay afterwards. Like
for much less than that.
Exactly. Like go for the lower hanging fruit.
So these are just like buckets that they just jump into? Essentially,
yeah. People get these tubs, and they have some pretty fancy ones, but they're filled with ice, and they can get really, really cold. I forget the temps. And you go in there for just a few minutes, and the benefits stop after a few minutes. It's not like you can just go chill in there for 20 minutes and be okay.
I was going to say.
Which is another thing a little bit concerning about doing that at home unsupervised, I think.
Unless you're doing like the Wim Hof method or something.
Right, which I don't think a lot of people do.
Which I just have no idea what it is besides.
Really?
I associate Wim Hof with like this old guy who just jumps into like frozen lakes. And then he does like breathing and all that kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
And so like, he's able to like just tolerate it for so long.
Yeah, so the Wim Hof method is a breath work method where you almost go into like a trance-like state because you get so oxygenated. I think it's a 2-part breath, like very similar to holotropic breathing. Again, you just get so oxygenated by the time that you go in, you can just stay for longer. Same thing with like breath holds too. If you do that and then you hold your breath, you could go for like endlessly almost. But yeah, outside of that, if you're just going in cold turkey, this can be rough.
Like I was browsing YouTube and I was going down the rabbit holes, and I remember seeing so many videos about like all these influencers and other people who wanted to learn the Wim Hof method and do all the kinds of stuff, and it always, like, no offense to any of that, and like I'm sure it's all legitimate, but it all seemed kind of pointless to me.
Sure.
Because like it's not sustainable. I don't think so. Unless you're like the creator of it and you're trying to push it onto people and really make it a thing. I don't think like that sort of breath work and that sort of environment where you're just like plunging into like cold lakes all the time is like sustainable. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an interesting experience to do. Like if you have like a retreat or something that you do like that with friends or whatever, like I think that's a cool, like whatever.
It's an experience.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But as far as to your point of being able to continue that and adapt it to your lifestyle, unless you're really looking to have a specific goal in mind of, I want that extra edge in my recovery because I have some really athletic goals here, or like I want to live to like 190 or whatever it is. Wow, sorry, shoulders popped. And or if you're like, I want like Marine soldier like mental state. I think those are kind of really the only two things. I do know some people that do breath work before doing a cold shower, and they'll just like finish up, like they'll take a normal shower and then they'll finish it off for a few like minutes, or they'll brush their teeth while they're doing a couple of minutes, and like that's fine if you want to do that. I do know there are some benefits for postnatal. So if you've given birth, I do know that cold showers can actually be really helpful in your recovery. It's shown to help regulate hormones and just kind of get you back to basics a little bit faster. So, but again, going back to, is it something that you want to incorporate in your lifestyle? Do you know why you're doing it, and does that match your goals?
Agreed. So I'm sure cold cryotherapy has its uses. When I see athletes doing it, I think to myself, like, okay, they're doing a part of their like training, part of their program, and like I just leave it alone. And I think to myself, like, yeah, if I was an athlete, I'd probably do it too. It'd probably feel pretty good because like if you're really pushing yourself as hard as possible, really pushing your body to like the edge that you can, and then you just dump into like a bucket of ice, like that must feel amazing.
Yeah.
On the flip side of things, like I consider cryotherapy in that sense like serious. On the flip side of things, when I'm thinking about showers and cold showers, I think of that as super goofy. Like, I imagine myself thinking of like, I don't know, some like hardo wannabe who's taking cold showers because he saw it on some sort of like, was it American Psycho like movie or something like that? You know what I mean? He read about it, how like it's really supposed to focus your mind and like make you like 10 times more motivated and like all that kinds of stuff.
That's
and
funny.
I'm just like, it's like it's weird like self-help kind of guru like fakeness to it.
I don't think there's a fakeness to it at all, because I think that it forces you out of your comfort zone for one, and then number two, if you're like starting your day with that, then you're setting yourself with a win, which is already going to boost, whatever confidence or whatever else you need to kind of get through your day. So if you're trying to make some big changes to your life and you want to set yourself up for success, like stacking things up, they're going to make you feel like you already have some wins behind you is not a bad idea.
Yeah, that's true. Although I would put cold showers at the bottom of the list.
Sure. No, honestly, when my therapist recommended it, I was like, you've got jokes. I was like, I'm not going to do that.
No, let's not do it. Like, I feel like the misery of a cold shower is like too much compared to any sort of health benefits you might get.
Yeah, there are other things that I personally would reach for before that one, just for myself personally. Yeah. With that being said, the only thing that I've done that's like comes close to cryotherapy, aside from like icing injuries, is just going from a sauna to like a cold. I've done that before. You go from like hot tub, like freezing cold pool, and like back before. But
I've seen people just do it for fun, just because like they're doing it for the shock and the interest of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't think they're doing it for health benefits.
Right. Yeah. And that was the thing, is I was just doing it because it was like summertime and it felt good. So I was like, yeah.
That and people in cold climates who walk outside in winter or to get cryotherapy.
That's the thing. Here in Boston, whenever clients ask me about it, I'm like, why pay? You can just go naked outside and stand in the cold for 10 minutes and there you go.
Go on your balcony or something like that. Yeah. If you have to, just like in the middle of winter, just bust open your window and stand right
there.
Seriously. You'll get your cryotherapy.
Yep.
But yeah, this trend of like people buying those tubs, filling it with ice, and doing it to themselves, I don't get that one.
Yeah.
Maybe they're just elite athletes who are like really big into it, and so like it kind of became a trend. And that I would understand, but if it's just like random Joe Schmo who like, oh, I go to the gym like 3 times a week and lift some weights.
Right.
Why are you doing cryotherapy?
Yeah.
There's no reason to.
Yeah. I feel like there's so many other recovery modalities that would have more benefits and be a little less intense.
Actually, I just had a thought. Like, if you're the average person who goes to the gym, like you're in decent shape, you're happy with like your gains and all that kinds of stuff, and you're going, like, you're only going 3 times a week. Like, that's probably enough time in between those 3 times a week to do a full recovery, right?
Yeah.
In
theory.
And then you don't even need like too many like tactics in terms of recovery besides like eating enough getting enough sleep and just getting enough food.
I would say that it depends on the intensity.
Yeah.
Like if you're doing some really heavy lifts or powerlifting or things like that, then even if you do only exercise 3 times a week, like you would need to like dial down on that recovery. Because like if you're not fueling those muscles and like, helping them recover fast enough and then going into another workout, then you're just going to be creating more damage than gains.
Right. But then I compare that person, I'm going to call them the average gym goer, to like an elite athlete. The elite athlete trains every single day.
Yeah.
Right?
But their intensity is programmed for them, right? Like even an elite athlete isn't going 100% every time that they work out.
Right.
If anything, it's opposite because they want to save 100% for on their game day or their competition day.
But they're still probably training every day just as hard as the average gym goer.
I would disagree with that.
Really?
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah. Because they do drills and they do other things in order to, again, save it for competition day. In the off season, absolutely. I feel like in the off season, that's where people are really putting in the work and really going hard in the workouts. But during the season, you're doing the things that are going to safeguard you from injury and then also just like working your skills.
Like, I imagine, and my point of bringing it up was that like, I imagine elite athletes need like specialized processes and techniques in order to recover enough to be able to work out the next day. You know what I mean? Like the average gym goer can probably just get enough sleep and get enough food and he'll be fine for like the day after tomorrow to go to the gym.
Yeah.
But then the elite athlete who trained 2 hours today, who needs to train again 2 hours tomorrow, probably needs like even more sleep, even more food, but like even more different recovery techniques in order to be able to continuously build on their progress.
Sure.
And if they ever fall behind in the recovery, then like their next day of training is going to be kind of wasted also.
Yeah. I mean, there's a different weight to it, right? But I think the same principle applies. And again, their programming is giving that into account.
Okay.
So that, I mean, also too, in like travel time and whatnot. So it's like they just have different needs. But I think just in their perspective, anything that's going to give them that 1% edge is what they're going for.
Yeah.
However, when you get average Joe who doesn't know what they're doing in the gyms, goes way too hard or, doesn't know how to recover, isn't sleeping at all. That's a big one that I see, honestly, is people who work out consistently. I ask them how much sleep they're getting, and they're like, I'm getting 5 hours sleep at night, 4 hours sleep maybe. And you're like, what are you doing? Or they're, pounding alcohol on the weekends, and it's like your recovery is not supporting your workouts at all. Like you have no business going as hard as you're going.
Yeah, the example in my mind that I was thinking of is like, and I'm going to go back to like weightlifting because that's what I do and that's what I'm most comfortable talking about, is like bodybuilders who are training for a competition, whatever level they're at, they go to the gym every day and they work out every day.
Yeah.
I understand that they have programs in which they don't exercise every single muscle every day, and so like they split it up into like their splits. But I imagine still they need to be able to recover quickly enough between day 1 and day 2, like Monday and Tuesday, in order to be able to keep working out and all that. So that they don't eventually burn out, so they can continuously keep growing and keep building and keep progressing.
Right.
So that's what I thought. So maybe like that, if you're doing something like that, maybe cryotherapy would be for you.
Sure. Sure. I still think the basics though, like sleep is a big one. Like if you're not getting enough sleep, like that's huge because your body needs it. There's no way around it. And I think majority of people just aren't getting enough sleep.
Yeah.
And then second of all is fueling correctly. Like if you're not eating the right diet, you know, just your body's going to take from the muscles instead of adding to it. So it's going to be a lot harder to put on whatever goals you're looking for. But yeah, to your point though, it depends on you and your goals, right? Like if you have very specific goals that you're looking to hit, you know, and that matches with your lifestyle and what you're able to do on a regular basis and do consistently, to your point of keeping it a lifestyle thing, then awesome, go for it. If there are other lower hanging fruit that you can reach for that are more accessible for you that you haven't tried yet, then go for those.
Yeah, my take on it is like the average person who lifts or exercises, don't do cryotherapy.
Yeah. No unnecessary torture. There's no need.
Save them however many thousands of dollars on like the tubs and all that kinds of stuff. And then like cold showers, try it. Freaking try it. I couldn't do it. I tried it. I couldn't do it for more than 2 days in a row. Like it's just miserable. Like the mental agony of it. It's not worth it.
That's funny.
Yeah.
All right, you want to talk about environment?
Yeah, so tip of the day was make sure that your environment works for you.
Yeah.
And so get into a good environment. So like whatever, wherever you are or whatever you want to be, make sure that the environment that you're in is working for you. And if it's not, then I guess you'll have to figure out how to deal with it for the time being or make it better for you.
Yeah.
And I know it's very general, but like, I think the big example that I was thinking of is that like when we moved from my parents' house to this place, and like our environment completely changed.
Yeah.
The other big example obviously is you moved from California to Boston. And so again, it was like a macro environment change versus like, I don't know, like a moving from one place to another.
Sure. But they both had a huge impact on me personally.
Yeah.
I heard this one quote and it's such a corny like comparison, but if you see a flower that's dying, you don't go to the flower and try to heal the flower. You fix the environment around it. You look at the soil, you look at the environment that it's in, the temperature that it's in order to like help this like flower grow. And similar as a person, if your environment isn't conducive to growth, then you have no business being there, and you need to fix it. And so that was a big one for me when I left California. I felt like I had made a lot of personal changes in my life, and I felt like I just kind of was hitting walls at every corner, and I felt like I didn't have room to grow. And living in a city where things are always new and always changing, and I felt just kind of like stuck and bored. It was like, this just isn't right. And so moving to Boston, however, all the things that I had worked so hard to make happen in LA just like fell into my lap out here, which is amazing.
Versus for me, my environment's kind of like didn't change too much.
It definitely changed though from Newton to here.
Yeah, like on a micro level, right? I didn't move from like Boston to LA or vice versa. I moved from different city to our city, and we moved from we were house sitting a single family home. Now we're having our own apartment, and the environment did change. I feel like the big change was like our neighborhood, and we moved from like a dead suburb essentially to dead center of a suburb to kind of like a more lively like marketplace area. And I thought it was nice. I think it's nice because like now whenever we walk by a lot of people, we walk by a lot of shops. There's always things to do. There's always like we're walking distance through a Whole Foods, and so we can always go shopping there and walk around. We're still surrounded by plenty of nature, so there's nature walks around here, and everything's great. Before, we were like in the dead center of a suburb, and I feel like I was a little bit suffocated because you'd walk outdoors and like you want to be surrounded by people that like kind of wake you up, people that energize you, versus when we walked around there, everything just kind of put us to sleep. And really made us feel like we're in an old area.
I literally felt like I was living in a retirement community. I would go to Whole Foods and just like all these like crippled old people just like shuffling around, and I'm like trying to get things done, and I was just like
The only sign that there was young people was that there was like teenagers working all the registers.
Yeah, seriously.
It's like you go to Whole Foods, there's teenagers behind the registers, and there's just geriatrics, to be kind, like walking around, like doing all the shopping.
It was pretty bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, what a difference. And honestly, for me too, I feel like that little move just made such a difference for my mental health because we go to the ocean a lot more, which for me just rejuvenates me and it makes me a much happier, calmer, less anxious person. Which is funny because like I didn't realize how much that impacted me until I got it back in my life, and like regular just visits to the coast and just realizing how much happier I am because of it.
Versus before, we were like 45 minutes away from a decent beach. Now I feel like we're like 15 minutes or less.
Yeah.
Which is nice. For me, I like the ocean too, but it's a little bit less important.
Sure.
But I don't know. I feel like my environment hasn't changed too much, and so my mood hasn't changed too much since then. So I'm still in a decent place. I still feel better because now we're closer to a lot of things. We're like 10 minutes away from the gym or less. Lots of shopping if we need to do shopping, lots of just walking around people if we need to. And they're young people and families, you know what I mean? It's not just older people, older generations, which makes me feel like, I don't know, it's fine.
Yeah. So one thing I would definitely like encourage is if you feel stuck in any area of life, really, take a look at the environment where you feel stuck and see if there's anything that you can change or anything that needs to adapt. And if there's nothing that you can work within that environment, maybe you need to find a different one.
Right. This actually, I just had a thought, also can apply to like virtual environments as well. And I guess I should say virtual environments is like essentially where do you frequent on the internet? Like what websites, what apps do you use, what sort of people, what kind of people you follow. So kind of like, what are these communities that kind of pop up around these areas? Like, who do you essentially expose yourself to?
Yeah.
You know?
That's a really good one.
Like, one thing I remember doing back in the day is that I used to read the New York Times a lot. And so when I read the New York Times, I would just go into the comment section and just spend like an hour, you know what I mean? I would go and work, I'd read the New York Times, and then I would just spend like an hour just reading the comments in like the New York Times section. It's like I was in that environment, so I was just being influenced by kind of the negativity of all the comments there, the outrage of the politics, everything like that. And I found myself like, okay, well, I don't want that environment. And like I knew this about myself, that like if I was going to continue reading articles in the New York Times, I was going to continue reading all the comments as well.
Yeah.
It was hard to stop, essentially, you know what I mean? Because like once you're in the article, it's so easy to just hit the comment section and just read it because it's like one button away.
Yeah.
But like I had to completely stop myself from reading the articles entirely. And I decided that at one point I was just going to read the headlines, but then after that realized that quickly like went away because I realized that I can't get an accurate read of anything if I just read the headlines.
Right.
And so I just stopped reading the New York Times. I stopped reading the news almost entirely because it's like every single place that has any sort of commentary associated with an article, like I essentially like almost absorb the negativity or like this animosity or like this attitude about the article from the commentary. You know what I mean? Any topic that I read about nowadays, I like feel like I'm just like accidentally through osmosis like picking up all these like negative or positive attitudes about something depending on like whatever the comment section does or something. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Like if I see like an advertisement for a movie, Christ, I am not going to look up reviews ahead of time for that movie. I am not going to Google it. I'm not going to go on any sort of like review site or anything like that because there's just going to be like crazy takes left and right about something, and it's either going to ruin it or like make it better for me. And like I just don't want to be influenced by those environments before I go see the movie.
Yeah.
My take is basically environments can be physical environments and locations depending on where you are. Your room, your house, your neighborhood, any sort of areas around you where you can kind of like meet up and like do things. Or it can also be virtual environments. For the kids anyways, this could be like Discord channels, groups. Just get away from toxic Discord. You know what I mean? Tumblr, I feel like, is a big one. Reddit, Instagram, who you follow, and like all like your feed is an environment in and of itself. You know what I mean? You can set up your feed and try to game the algorithm a little bit to make you feel better about things, to make you feel more curious about the life around you, instead of like seeing things on your feed that's basically FOMO, like comparing yourself against this person, FOMO, this person's life's amazing, FOMO, and just like you just feel like shit afterwards. Excuse me.
Yeah. And it's crazy too, to your point of like how much your environment can impact you, but then also too like how much you can influence your environment depending on your state. Because like for me, if I'm stressed out or anxious, I am so messy. It's like those phases where my car is a direct like indicator of how well my mental health is, because when I am just like in an anxious state or there's a lot going on, my car is so dirty, messy, like trash in there or whatever else. And then when I'm in a good spot, my car's clean or our room's clean, things are picked up and tidy. And it's just so funny how like your state is like a direct impact. So again, if you're kind of wondering like, am I in a good place or not? Again, check your environment.
Yeah. Your emotions, this has been studied a lot. Your emotions and your body are a two-way street. Like your body will affect your emotions and your emotions will affect your body. So what does that mean? Is that like, okay, well, when you're emotionally happy, you will smile. You know what I mean? That's the physical kind of it. And then when I say it's a two-way street, it's been studied that when you smile, your emotional response to it will like be, you're not going to be all of a sudden happy if you just fake a smile, but it will have a measurable impact. Like it'll move the needle a little bit, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so it's like, if you feel like crap and your room is like a mess, you'll feel better if you clean your room, but then if you clean your room, you'll also feel better.
Yeah.
So it's like, is that the two-way street thing I'm talking about? I don't know. I probably messed that one
You
up.
phrased it a little bit weird, but that's okay. No, exactly though. And like even to your example of us moving here, when we were in our own space and we were able to kind of make it our own thing, just the way like I felt like everything just kind of opened up for us.
Yeah.
And it just influenced everything about how I felt.
Yeah. This is not advice, but like, you don't wait for yourself to feel better to clean your room. Just clean your room and that will affect, like, it'll move the needle a little bit in terms of making you feel better.
Yeah.
I don't know why like that one's like coming to my mind like specifically.
Yeah. I think it's a good one though.
But it's like with the car also. It's like if you're feeling anxious or something, it turns into a mess. But then like if you clean the mess, you will feel a little bit less anxious.
Right.
Again, it'll move the needle.
Yeah.
I keep saying.
Right.
People understand that, right?
They do.
Okay.
You're good. I got you.
Yeah. But yeah, like physical environment's important. Virtual environment, I feel like is much more important for the younger kids.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think that's a really good point, because I think it's such a subtle thing that if you're not conscious of it and you're just taking in and taking in, taking in, you're not realizing just like how much all that is influencing your state of being.
And so much of like a virtual environment, I feel like is also being controlled by the algorithm.
Yeah.
Like all these companies out there are purposefully trying to manipulate the environment, your virtual environment, in order to essentially drive engagement.
Yeah.
Like they want you to be staring at your phones more and more and more, because that's how they make money essentially.
Right. And I think too, it's always a good idea to kind of go through and like prune your follow list. I do that every once in a while, where I'll just kind of go through and just like delete people who I follow. And some of it might not even be that they're posting stuff that I don't like or isn't useful or whatever. Sometimes it's just a matter of just like paring down the amount of information that I'm taking in every day. Sometimes that's like honestly the biggest reason why. But then also too thinking about like, okay, like what do I actually want to take away from this? What do I want to learn? What do I want to focus on? And just kind of dialing in on that and just cutting out the rest, because otherwise you're just on information overload and your brain goes to fuzz.
You know the people who do it right? The people who only have puppies and kittens on their newsfeed.
Seriously.
It's like they just subscribe to or follow like all these little
That's
like people with like huskies, like cats, and like all the kind of stuff, and they open their like algorithm and like it just
little wholesome stuff.
Yeah,
it's hilarious.
It's like shows like all these like. It's like a picture of 3 kittens, picture of 4 kittens,
That's funny.
Picture of 2 huskies playing.
Yeah.
Picture of a soldier coming back from war and a dog
God.
reacting to it.
All the feels.
Yeah, exactly.
That's funny.
They're winning.
Yeah.
Because they opened up their algorithm and they just feel good.
Yeah. That's one thing that I think is a little bit tough for me, because like I like having social media for like educational purposes. Like I learn a lot about what's new in the industry, and I try to keep up with like what's trending and whatnot. But then the part of me that doesn't want to be in work mode just wants to see like little goofy stuff, like you said, that's entertaining and cooking or whatever. Yeah.
I feel like your social media is almost like LinkedIn then.
Kind of.
LinkedIn is like,
honestly.
LinkedIn is like supposed to be where like all those people post like their motivational stories.
Yeah.
Or, I mean,
Kind
this is
of.
what I did in this situation. But like
Yeah.
instead of like this weird like white collar kind of like motivational crap, it goes into like fitness and
I was
health
gonna say because
industry.
no one I know is like on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
That's funny. Yeah, that's a good
I
point.
feel like LinkedIn environment has become a little bit of a meme.
I wouldn't know. I don't have a
It's
LinkedIn.
like this weird. Okay, so like my LinkedIn perspective is a little biased because I only see the worst stories of people like telling people going on LinkedIn and posting these stories about how they overcame adversity in order to make $1 million, and nobody fucking cares.
Yeah.
People only care because they take this and like take a snippet of it and say like, this is an example of what not to do, of who not to be essentially.
Oh no.
Where it's like I don't know, the most common example of this is like give a rich person $1,000 and they'll turn it into $2,000
All
over a year.
right.
Give a poor person $1,000 and they'll lose it all or something like that. And it's just like moral of the story: rich people are just better with money, and you're just like,
Yeah.
bro, people need to eat.
Yeah.
Like that $1,000 is going to a fucking food budget. Oh god, this is like the most. And like I think people who post that kind of stuff, they do it unironically,
Yeah.
as like some sort of motivational BS.
Right.
I don't know.
It's
Another
interesting.
my take on this, anyways, is like get the hell off LinkedIn. That's a terrible, toxic environment. Like keep it on there if like your professional career relies on it, but just don't interact with, don't ever like look it up or ever like go into like check out the influencers on LinkedIn.
Yeah. I always find it interesting what people choose to share, and I also find it interesting what stories people are inspired by. Because I feel like it just is a very widely diverse take on things, where it's like someone's like really inspired by something, and I watch it, I'm like, but yeah, body language.
Yeah, body language. Let's move on.
Yeah. So what brought up this one?
You brought up this one for me,
Okay.
where you stare at me, you need something, but you refuse to use your words. And I'll look at you and be like, what can I do? What do you need? And you just don't say anything. And I'm like, what's going on? Like, talk to me. And you're like, no words. And I'm like,
I'm like, no words, only feelings. And he's like, "Grah." So just a little bit of context. I am not great at verbal communication sometimes. Like I had a really long time until like going to therapy and whatnot, being able to identify what specific feelings were in my body and being able to say like, oh, that's anger, or oh, that's sadness, or whatever. It was always just kind of like a jumble of like, I either felt good or I felt frustrated. Like those were kind of my two like default things. And so I couldn't put like a name to that. So because of that, sometimes like I'll feel things really strongly in my body, but I don't really have the words to express what it is. And so I'll just be weird physically. And he's like, what are you doing?
well, I feel like that. I'm a guy, so that's my default state.
Yeah.
I have emotions. I can't identify them. They get put into a filter of depression or anger. But yeah, basically, usually in that sort of situation where if I have feelings and I want to say something or I need to identify something, the way I'll just communicate it is not so much by saying exactly what I'm feeling or what I need. I'll just say like, hey, I need time.
Yeah.
And then just like I'll sit with it, and then just like it'll either go over, I'll get over it, or I'll just process it out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that's different. You know what I mean? Like the reason why I want to talk body language is not so much that like me and you need to work on communicating with our words. I think I was bringing up body language because I wanted to discuss how the majority of our communication happens with our bodies, I would say.
Yeah.
And how we interact with each other and how people see each other and perceive each other. And it's important to be able to do that, essentially.
Yeah.
Let me turn this light on. I feel like it's getting a little...
I was going to say we're like in the shadows. This is the Halloween episode of Tips from Your Boyfriend.
Well, the sun's gone down. Before we had natural light. Now I feel like we're gone to artificial light.
It's awesome, though, that we're filming at a time where the sun's still out, even though before it was like pitch black.
Yeah, I agree. But yeah, body language is what? Like, I don't even remember, 90% of our communication or something?
I think it's 80%,
Yeah.
80 something.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, majority of what you're communicating isn't through words.
Yeah, and so like if you ever meet somebody whose body language is weird, you'll always get a weird vibe from them. No matter if they use their words correctly or they say something like normal or they're trying to be normal, if their body language is weird, you're just kind of like,
Yeah. No, absolutely. Like eye contact is a big one. People who don't use eye contact, or they like stare you in the soul and you're like, whoa. Face talkers.
Yeah.
I think that's an interesting one, is like,
face talkers,
yeah, exactly. Like proximity. It was interesting. So I took a nonverbal communication class in college, and I remember she had this one where she had like girls and girls and guys and guys. Mm-hmm. And she said, okay, walk towards each other until you feel comfortable. And then when you've hit your comfort limit, like hit stop. And like the girls were able to get like pretty close together. The guys were like, like stay like 6 feet away from me before you're like, dude, you're in my zone. And it was funny because then they went with like straight like a guy and a girl, and he's like, hey, you can come close. Like it's just funny, those little dynamics between like what's close and like what's not close enough, and that little space bubble boundary.
But I think that's a body language thing. That's not so much like one's right, one's wrong.
Right.
That's just communication of how guys communicate with each other versus how girls communicate
exactly.
with their bodies.
Yeah.
Because the other example that I saw and I remember is that they had two girls that were friends talking to each other and two guys who were friends talking to each other. And one that ended up happening is like when the girls talk to each other, they would face their bodies towards each other and talk to each other.
Yeah.
Versus when the guys were hanging out, they would be sitting in like two chairs and they'd both be facing in one direction and just kind of just like talking to each other like this. They wouldn't even look at each other.
Yeah.
They would just sit next to each other, like hanging out and like saying shit to each other.
Yeah. And I think that that's one of like the very proven things, is that you lean towards the things that you like or are interested in. So when you see people leaning towards you in a conversation, or one thing that they say in like the dating world is like, notice if he angles his legs towards you or if his feet are in close, like anytime if there's like a leaning or like just like a closeness to the things that you like. Or the opposite, if you notice someone kind of like backing up a little bit, turning away a little bit, like eyeballs going a different direction, then it's like, okay, well, time to back off.
And these have been studied a lot.
Yeah.
But these are also like the basics of body language as well.
Right.
So like if someone's leaning away from you, I feel like you kind of learn that at a very young age.
Not necessarily. There are a lot of people who are just like body language and like cue oblivious. Like we've all known those people where it's like you're in a conversation, you're trying to get out of it, and the homeboy is just like still talking to you, and you're like, ah.
But it's like those aren't the majority, I would say.
No, but I still think it's a good enough amount of the population.
Yeah, like there's a
all the COVID babies.
Oh God, the kids. Yeah, the kids I'm worried about. They missed at least a year of school at like a critical age, whatever age they were at. And like they weren't socializing at all in person. They weren't talking to any adults in person besides their parents.
No like facial cues like below. Like I think that's going to be an interesting generation, because they only had like eyes to kind of look at and take cues from for a while instead of like a whole face when it comes to like reading emotions and whatnot. And I'm curious about that.
So like best case scenario, they're almost essentially just put back a year in development. And like I'm not saying that like they're underdeveloped or anything like that, but I'm just saying like there's a natural progression to development in terms of building up like essentially like social skills.
Yeah.
And they're just going to be behind by a year.
Yeah.
Which they can catch up if they wanted to. But on average, still, I think the person's going to be behind by a year.
Yeah. And I think one thing too, like when you're having, so say in context of relationships, when it comes to body language, if you're having a serious conversation with your partner, just take a moment and like say you're having a discussion, right? Like, nice way of saying an argument. Like, just check your body language and kind of what you're doing. Because if you're like this, everything crossed, guards are way up, it's going to be harder for you to be receptive to anything that they might say. Like, regardless of whether you think you're right or wrong or whatever. What you were talking about earlier about your physical body being able to impact your emotional state, if you're more open, it's actually going to impact your emotional state of being more open and receptive. So that's one thing to kind of keep in mind is just check yourself, because if you're sending off those guarded signals, even for yourself and your own like openness, like open yourself up a little bit.
Yeah, I don't know, it's like I don't want to go into all the intricacies of like, do this in this situation, do that in this situation. You know what I mean? That's gonna become like, we're gonna be sitting here for like hours and hours and hours trying to like deconstruct all of human communication and relationships.
No, I know, but I mean that like some of the ones off the top of my head that kind of come to mind that I notice when I see couples arguing or when I like notice people who have weird situations in public, like those are generally like the ones that I see.
Maybe. I feel like the people who are not quite able to communicate are the ones who just don't impose or don't take up space, essentially. You know what I mean? Like, it's very normal when you're in a conversation that you're here, they're there, and like there's this, you know what I mean, like interaction between the two of you, versus like sometimes it seems to me that you're here and they're pretending, or they're trying to take up as little space as possible, or like trying to like minimize themselves in some way, and you're like, what am I interacting with here at this point? You know what I mean? Like how do I play tennis with somebody who's like desperately trying to not beat me at tennis? I can't play tennis competitively or like try to win or enjoy tennis if the other person is over there actively trying not to win, or like actively trying not to be there, or actively trying to like not beat me back or something like that. Yeah. Bad example, but like you need to have somebody there to interact with it before like it feels normal almost. And it seems to me like so many people out there are not firmly placing their feet on the ground and just like being comfortable standing there taking up space, and they're always trying to be like non-confrontational or non like I don't know, what do you call it, intrusive or something like that. My point being, my take is like, it's very normal to take up space, a normal amount of space. People respect that, people expect that, and people will be completely fine with it.
In regards to body language only, or are you talking about just like your general demeanor?
Both, I guess.
Yeah.
But body language also. I guess demeanor is part of body language, isn't it?
No, we're talking about nonverbal.
What's demeanor then?
Well, what I mean is like just like the way that you present yourself and like, you know, taking up space, like as far as like personality goes, right?
Right.
Like, but yeah.
I guess. I don't know. My nose is itchy again.
I know. I've been watching it like more and more like,
I've been trying not to. I've been overly focused on my nose, and it probably shouldn't be.
That's funny.
But anyways, I don't know. What else do you want to say about body language?
Well, I thought we were going to take it more towards like tips or like things that you notice like in interpersonal reactions, but if we're not going to go there, then yeah, I don't know what to say.
I feel like it's difficult because like any sort of information or any sort of tips that we can do for body language are just too basic and superficial.
Well, what do you notice as far as like body language within our relationship?
Within our relationship?
Yeah.
I feel like you communicate majority, or you communicate above average with body language in terms of relationships.
Yeah.
I would say so. Like I'd say like when you're in a relationship, there's an average communication of like verbal versus there's an average communication of body language, right? And I think you're above average body language and slightly below average in verbal because like they kind of like correlate with each other.
Right.
That's all. And so like I'm trying to read what you're saying more so with like your actions rather than your words.
Yeah.
Actions are actually a big one of body language. Not only how you position your body in space, but also like how you just move your body around. How you walk is part of body language. Where you walk is part of body language. Things like that.
Yeah. What are some of like the biggest cues that you noticed from me of like, I don't know, that are like red lights or green lights, I guess I'd say?
I wouldn't say there's red lights or green lights. What I would say though is that you tend to, I don't know, you tend to follow me around when you're anxious. You tend to
Thanks, babe.
Which is fine because like I think you're just looking for reassurance and physical affection and touch. You tend to demand attention with your body as well, doing the periscope thing. And you're like, you want hugs, and so she puts up her hands like this and just waits there like that when she wants hugs. And I'm like, okay, I'll give you hugs. It's just like little kind of differences when like you get to know somebody, you just pick up on some of their signs.
Yeah.
Which it's like, okay, well, people do it differently, and so you kind of have to learn what they're doing, and then you'll be able to react to it appropriately.
And I think looking for congruence between what someone's body language is saying versus like what they're saying verbally too, I think is always important, because if their body is saying one thing and their words are saying another, then just kind of maybe getting curious about that and, you know, delving deeper into why there's that, because the body never lies. So somebody's body is going to be a more accurate read of their like mental, physical, emotional state than their words are going to be.
I agree. Yeah, it doesn't lie, but there's an example, like there are people who control their body language just as much as they control what they say.
Sure.
And so that becomes a little tricky.
Yeah. But I mean, I'm talking in general though.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I don't know. I just wanted to tell the kids to like focus more on their body language some more, you know?
Okay.
That's all.
No further.
Well, I mean, we talked mostly about like what I wanted to talk about in terms of that.
Okay.
I think so. It's fine. And then we talked about me and your relationship in terms of body language.
Yeah.
And like how you communicate instead of like using words sometimes.
Yeah.
And like that's pretty much all I want to talk about.
Yeah.
Like you have your version, I have my version of body language. And like everybody has their own version. So like when you get used to somebody and you learn it, then it becomes natural.
Yeah, sure.
That's all.
Okay. Any other thoughts? Stream of conscious, I mean.
Stream of consciousness. Well, it's like what's been on my mind today is just people arguing with each other. And so like like there's two people on two different sides who are arguing with each other, and they're both trying to convince the other to get to like their own side. Well, no, it's like a one-way street essentially. And I think to myself like, okay, well, I'm trying to be kind of not a middle party, but I'm trying not to take sides, but also trying to like figure out how to what do they call it? Not negotiate. Keep the peace. Mediate, essentially.
Referee.
Mediate is the right word. It's just that I feel like whenever someone says mediate, people's minds usually go to the wrong place. Mediation is essentially what I was doing, where I wanted to make sure that whatever argument those two are having, that at the end of the day, they're not going to have like some sort of falling out.
Sure.
Like that was just my best interests. That's what I was trying to do. I wasn't trying to like assuage them or trying to suck up to them or like trying to tell either of them that like they're great people or anything like that. I'm literally just trying to be like, okay, well, I hope they just don't have too much animosity with each other at the end of the day.
Yeah, we're on the same team.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like I don't know how to do it. I have no experience with that.
Well, it's difficult because what you're doing is, just for a little context, it's online with strangers that he doesn't know in person. And so I think that's a bit difficult because like anything that you say online can be interpreted like a million different ways depending on who you're talking to.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a tricky one.
Yep.
But I do appreciate your point though, of like at the end of the day, like there was a guy back in the day who he was a mentor for me as far as like personal training goes. And one of his biggest tips was like just whenever your client feels like they're hitting a wall or there's a disagreement or whatever, he's like, just always remind them like, hey, like I'm on your team. Like at the end of the day, like we're on the same team. Like, let's figure this out. And I always kind of carry that in any situations where there's like conflict of just kind of reminding myself, and then if possible them as well, like, hey, like at the end of the day, you and I were on the same team.
And I think that from my experience personally right now, just saying the words is not quite working out for me.
Yeah.
Being like, oh, we're on the same team. Everyone's going to agree with that. Be like, yeah, we're on the same team. And everyone's still going to have their antagonistic emotions.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, okay, how do I poke a hole in that to like release some of the pressure?
Sure.
I can't say like we're on the same team because that doesn't do anything.
Well, yeah, because you're talking to strangers on the internet.
But there's also ways of doing that too. I feel like writing style is like a way of like communicating with people to get them to do things too. Like, you know what I mean? Like there's books you read and the writing style is so engaging and you don't really understand why, but it is, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Versus other books you read and I feel like they're using all the same words almost.
Yeah.
But you just hate the writing style. And so you're like left there like scratching your head and thinking to yourself like, why is one person able to accurately convey emotion or convey like an idea versus like very well in other words versus the other person just can't do it.
Sure.
That's what I was thinking about today.
Meanwhile, I'm up here like nerds.
Yeah. Oh well. Wow, what are you thinking about today?
I didn't really have too many thoughts. I was sleepy today. I wanted a nap. Yeah, other than that, just kind of thinking about what we can do, you know, as far as videos or things to kind of like make this more engaging and less of a snooze.
Yeah. We got to get those controversial takes going.
Yeah, other than that, nothing too crazy. I feel like today was like a low-key, calm day.
We got to talk about pineapple on pizza. That gets people
The
going.
best.
I've never had it.
You had it once, but it
on
wasn't.
pizza?
It was a sorry excuse for a pineapple on pizza. It was in Connecticut. No, it wasn't in Connecticut. It was in Rhode Island, and it was a very like tomato saucy pizza to the point where it's like, this is not a pizza, and it is not a good representation of a pineapple on pizza. So we will have to get you one because it's worth it.
I don't even remember that one. It did not leave a good impression anyways.
Yeah, well, it didn't on me either. I was like, this is not pineapple pizza.
Because I just think of like those little pineapple rings that you put onto a pizza and then you eat it. And like that's what comes to my mind of pineapple on pizza.
It's not pineapple pizza.
I know. Okay.
You sorry
anyways.
East Coaster. Uncultured.
Anyways, we can either talk about pineapple on pizza or the other trend today that I saw was would you rather be stuck in the woods with a man or a bear or something like that? I don't know if you saw that one.
No. What weird things do you read on the internet?
Like that one's a big one that's like kind of causing a lot of controversy or something.
Like just a random man or like a man you know or like...
No, it was like on TikTok or something and it got really controversial and it's essentially one of those topics for Battle of the Sexes and it's like they were asking women, interviewing women, like, would you rather be stuck in the woods with a random man or a bear? And like they asked like I don't know how many women, but every single woman besides like one said that they would rather be stuck in the middle of the woods with a bear instead of a man. And so like that went through like it was on Reddit. It like went like wildfire on Reddit and like everybody was like pissed about it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I'm weighing my options.
Got it. See, that's what I'm saying.
Because I can very clearly have in mind someone that I would not want to be stuck in a forest with.
I think
like,
that's the thing. Yeah.
I'm like, just eat
like,
me.
When I think the thing is like when you get like when you ask a random woman if she'd rather be stuck with a random man or a bear, I think her mind goes to like the worst places.
Yeah,
the worst men.
I mean, now if you get stuck with like Justin Timberlake or Steph Curry, then like sign me up. But
that's what I'm saying. Versus men, they can't relate because they're not women, essentially.
Right.
Because you can't go to a man and it's like, would you rather be stuck in the middle of the woods with a random woman or a bear? Because it's like, a random man will just be like, what kind of question is that?
Right.
It's like, would you rather eat a grenade or an apple? What kind of freaking question is that? I don't know.
That's funny. All right. Cool.
But yeah, that was episode 20. Let's not touch the third rail too hard. You don't know what a third rail is?
No, I don't know what that is.
Oh my god.
This guy trolls Reddit too much.
No. Trains, like subways in cities, they have 3 rails.
I grew up in California, babe. Subways are not a thing.
So that's probably a big thing in like big cities like New York and Chicago. Basically, in subways, there's 3 rails. There's the right rail, the left rail, where like the wheels of the train go.
You have the crazy eyes.
I'm trying to explain what a third rail is. The reason why you don't touch the third rail, because the third rail is where the train gets power through electricity. And so if you ever fall into the train tracks in a subway system, there's 3 rails. There's the right, left. Those are the wheels of the train. And then there's a third rail in the middle. Never touch the third rail because you will get shocked to death.
Is that on each track, or is that like one rail, 2 rail, and then 3 rail on like the different?
Each track has 3 rails. There's
Got it.
right, left, and then there's a rail usually in the middle that powers the train.
Okay.
And so that's where like the saying came from. Like it's not, there's no third rail in every single, what do you call it?
Does the T have a third rail?
No, the T doesn't have a third rail.
Okay.
T has, well, it depends because the green
The
line.
T is the railway in Boston.
Yeah, the T isn't really. The green line in Boston has power coming from cables above it. And that's why whenever you see the green line going above, you see like these 2 like little things that go above it, and that's where the electricity that comes to power the green rail.
Got it.
Power the batteries in the green line. The other lines, I'm pretty sure, have a third rail. Yes. Like the red line has a third rail, and so because like the red line's like an actual subway where like it actually goes underground, or like a train, right? It doesn't have these connectors to like
Why don't you just say don't
lines
jump off the
of
track? Don't get on the tracks of the train.
Okay. So you understand the phrase "it moves the needle,"
Yes.
but you don't understand the phrase of "don't touch the third rail."
No.
That's wild. Okay. All right. Anyways.
I mean, like, we have barometers in California of like things that move a needle, so like that makes sense. We don't have subways.
Okay. This is a regional cultural thing in America, I think, where places that have subways would understand that you don't touch the third rail versus places that don't have subways. You don't understand that phrase. Okay, got it.
West Coast, East Coast.
Yeah. Because like train tracks, the like freight train rails, you know what I mean? They don't have third rails because it's just like the it's run on coal or whatever. So it's fine.
I should stop torturing you.
Yeah.
All right,
Anyways,
you guys.
Yeah. So yeah. Anyways.
Find us on Instagram. I'm Bethany Calliston. We're at Tips from Your Boyfriend. He's on the new Twitter, X Threads or whatever.
At the Calliston.
At the Calliston. And then we're on TikTok as well as at Tips from Your Boyfriend.
Yeah, and then keep an eye out for an announcement for our next show.
Yeah, and also too, we need enough subscribers where we can start using our phone instead of our janky little laptop setup. So if you have a chance, hit that subscribe button. That would be super helpful for us.
Yeah, and then check. We're doing a lot of shorts, or as much as possible, anyways, these days. Anything we find interesting about health or relationships, and anything goofy. And yeah, follow us on Shorts and follow us on TikTok.
Yeah, awesome.
All right, guys.
Have a good one.
We'll see you next time.